Hello. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all honored guests. Welcome again to Astro Park, and welcome to our public panel, Search for ET. First, I'd like to have a brief apology because unfortunately, Dr. Andrew won't be joining us tonight because he's just recently came down with COVID right before his travels. But we still have two other guests, so welcome tonight. So please, first, let's welcome Professor Dr. Michael Garrett, or Michael, our first panelist. Please give him a warm welcome. And next, let's welcome our very own researcher, Dr. Supachai Awiphan, or Dr. Fluke, our very own researchers. And of course, I'm Matipon Dangmatitam. I'm a science communicator, and also I'm the director of International Training Center in Astronomy under the auspices of UNESCO, right here at NARIT headquarters. So first, let's just have a quick touch up with everybody, all those panelists here. So first, let's tell us about yourself and what it is that you do. Let's start with you, Michael. Is it on?
Yeah, it's on now. Okay. Thanks. So yeah, I'm Mike Garrett. I'm a SETI researcher. So one of the main things that I do is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. I work at the University of Manchester, and I've been really interested in this topic since I was really quite young. So like some of the people in the audience here. And I'm also chairman of the International Academy of Astronautics and the SETI committee that's there. And that committee has a very important role in terms of the verification and the process that would be undertaken if we do, in fact, sort of discover a signal. So the SETI committee is the body that would react to that and would inform all the people that need to be informed about that process.
Sounds like you're the right person to talk about. We want to talk about ET, right? All right, let's move on to our next panelist. Dr. Fluke, can you tell us about yourself?
Okay, I'm Supachai Awiphan. That is, everyone call me Fluke. I'm researcher at NARIT here, and normally I working in exoplanet and also astrobiology to search for life and search for the exoplanet. And normally I graduated from Manchester, that's where my is working on here. I'm PhD from Manchester, and nowadays I think if we have very few astronomers that working in exoplanet in Thailand now. It's just only less than 10 people that working in exoplanet. I will be one of that one. That means we have the small community of exoplanet and astrobiology work in Thailand, and that is why exoplanet is related to alien, because if you want to find alien, you will have to find the planet where it's on. That means that is the thing that I'm working on, to find planet and also study on the planet what is going on that planet, is have the atmosphere or not, and that is my work and on my research. Yeah.
So in other words, you're not looking for aliens directly, you're looking for their homes.
Yeah, I'm looking for their home, but okay. I think for my you're looking for the something that is like alien signature, right?
Okay, and then you've looking for exoplanets, and I believe you've discovered some exoplanets yourself.
Yeah, I think at NARIT here in Thailand now we have been discovered 13 exoplanets already, and I discovered I think 4 of them. Yeah, I think that is just nowadays, if you know not familiar with exoplanets, now it's the planet outside the solar system, and now we have more than 5,000 exoplanets that have been discovered. That means now we know 5,000 alien home, possible alien
5,000 places there could be.
But you know that how many stars on the sky? It's billion of stars. That means it's just we just find a tiny bit of their home.
Certainly many more homes waiting to be discovered. Possibly most of them are empty, but maybe some of them are not. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So Obviously, when we talk about aliens, let's just get it out of the way. People, some people believe aliens have already visited us. There are many. Some people believe there are any evidences that they have already here. They have been here for a long time. Like, what about all these UFO, the flying saucers? What about the ants who built the pyramids? What about the mysterious crop circles? So, if any of you has a comment, do you think? What about those evidences? Aren't those the evidence of aliens have visited us? Do you think the aliens have already visited us or not? And what about those things that people claim they see? All right, anyone?
Okay, yeah, no, I don't think there's any good evidence that, extraterrestrials are here today or yesterday or any other point in the history of the solar system. If you look, for example, at the solar system, we've been able to image, the moon, Mars, Pluto, even many bodies there, and there's absolutely sort of no evidence that those have ever been visited by, any other civilization. The only thing that you see there that is technology is the technology that we've brought to those planets. And I think the evidence for UFOs or UAPs, as they're now called, is very, very poor. I think it's good that we actually do begin to pay attention with the technology that we have for astronomy, that we actually look at the sky and look for interesting things, unexpected things that are happening in the sky, and there's various groups around the world that are doing that. But so far, I think the evidence, there is no evidence that there are sort of aliens amongst us or that they've been here in the past.
Anything you want to add?
For me, I say maybe, because one thing, if you say about alien, which kind of alien? You mean if you say if you have something like alien like ET in the movie, I say maybe no, because I think we don't have the clear evidence like might have been said. But if you say about some living small structure like bacteria or something from outer space,
like microscopic life from outer space?
If we say that alien, maybe we have encountered that one because it maybe come from the comet or something already. That means this is the thing that we have to define first, that what is alien. If you say in the movie, maybe no for UFO or something that we don't have the clear evidence, or now as you see that we have the clear image, but it seems like we don't have the clear contact with them. But if you say the alien is small living thing, maybe it comes with a comet, asteroid or something already. But the other thing is, if you say the alien is the one that is in our solar system, if it comes from outside the solar system, it will be very hard to be. Because that the space travel from the nearest star to be here is 4 light years away. That means you have to have the technology. You have to travel 4 light years and come to the Earth and contact with us. And that the space travel is not have been seen. If we have been seen, we should be contact or do something with them already.
But okay, but some people might say but you are what if the government is trying to, keep it silent? So as a researchers, astronomers, have you ever encountered anything somebody tell you please don't look at this planet, please don't look at this star, anything like that at all? Would that kind of thing, would it even be possible for an astronomer to keep their mouth shut if they discover something? What do you think?
That if now we have the social media, and that if you discover alien already, that one scientist should be shouting out already. That is the thing that's why I think even the government try to keep it out. That if this information may be leaked to something, that means now as the SETI or something as the working in SETI, and I think there are no clear evidence that you have been detected, right, Mike?
No, I think it would be. I think you're right. It would be really difficult to keep it secret, and in addition to that, I've never had a talk with a government official that says don't point your telescope in this direction. Having said that, I think if we did make a detection, then you don't really know what would happen, because more than likely it's an astronomer who's just doing astronomy and they notice something that's really weird, so they're not looking for an alien signal or a SETI signal, but they find something that's just weird, and they actually discover alien life. And if that happens, then I don't think it'll be kept quiet, but I think interesting things will happen, especially if the signal contains information. If it's modulated in some ways, then all sorts of interesting things could happen.
So instead of like one person found an alien and other people tell them to keep their mouth shut, it's probably more likely a bunch of astronomers gather together and like, could this mean alien? And they maybe come to a conclusion, right? But I think like one of the keyword that's like really popped up in this conversation a lot is evidence, and that's I think the important part is that there are currently no solid evidence that they have visited us. So let's leave it at that. We don't have evidence yet, and in science, that's what we go by. As long as there's evidence, we're willing to believe anything. But as of now, we still don't have any convincing enough evidence yet that they're here. So this brings us to the next question. So if there has not been any evidence, if there's no conspiracy, we really haven't found any aliens. So why aren't there any? Why haven't we found any? What do you think?
Yeah, I think why we don't have find any, because maybe it's hard to find the real signal also. I think if we want to find the signal from the alien, now we have a lot of mobile phone signal already, and how you can separate from your mobile phone signal from the radio signal from alien, that is really hard to find already. And the other thing is, that when we want to communicate with something, sometimes we have to know each other first. We have to know that they are there, and we point the telescope and try to communicate. That if you want to search for the signal or something, it's like you search for the needle in a haystack already. That means you try to search for the thing that you don't know already, and it's really very hard to find. And one thing that I think have been researched in my research is, one thing is, if we have the alien in almost every star, it may be very hard for them to detect the Earth and try to contact the Earth, because Earth is located in somewhere very far away from the dense area of the star in the Milky Way galaxy. We are in the bright spot, and even we have all of the stars that have the civilization, it's only 14 of them can be detected us in each year. That means it will be very hard for aliens to be detect us also. It's not only us to detect them, but it's hard for them to detect us.
Maybe
also.
They just aren't even aware that we're here, and
Yeah,
it's really hard for them to find.
Yeah.
And of course, I guess that's also like, how would an ant even realize we're trying to communicate with them? So maybe it's the same thing for them. They just maybe they are communicating with us. We just don't have the technology to understand what they're saying.
Yeah, and also one thing that, have you heard about the Archibald signal? The signal that we send from the Archibald disk, there is a big dish that we have sent already. We send the image of human, but nowadays, if you talk with the linguistic, people that study about the language, they say that this kind of signal is too simple for the alien to detect it. Because that you send the signal like 0101, and it may be too simple for them to detect like this is the signal from the Earth. That is the thing that it will be very complex if we want to communicate, because we have to communicate with them in the direct way and let them know what is we try to understand, and we want to communicate also.
Yeah, certainly. Those are some still many obstacles why it might not be possible. And of course, there's also a possibility that maybe they aren't there to begin with. And until we found one, we never know that for sure, whether we're the only one. But if they were to exist, in your opinion, what do you think they would look like and how different they would be to us? Are they going to look like, the little green men that, we learn to see? Or what do you think? Any speculation is fine, of course, because we don't know anything at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no idea. what an alien would look like. And there are people that know a lot more about this than I do. But I think there's a good chance that if we do detect an alien signal, that it'll actually come from not something that's biological, but something that's post-biological. So from a machine, for example, a machine with intelligence, with AI, with super AI. So it could actually look like something very, very different, non-biological, incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent, something that might even not be interested in us because we're probably very dumb compared to they are. If it is biological, then I think the way they have evolved will depend on the environment, their planet, what kind of planet they have. It's unlikely to have exactly the same gravity as this planet. So, they could be much heavier and squatter, or they could be very thin and long, for example. So I think they will look very different from the way we look, and they'll be optimized to survive and to thrive on the planet that they evolved on.
Or I guess they could be so different from us that we can't even imagine what they want to look like right now, right? Yeah. All right. So we mentioned before about the signal and the radio signal. So when we talk about finding not just alien but intelligence, I guess we often talk about the signal, and particularly in radio. So why is it that we're looking for the signal, and in particular in radio? Do you have an explanation?
Well, the thing about radio signals, so for example, we all have our mobile phones on in this room at the moment, and we have laptops. And the kind of signal that we use to communicate is very different from the signals that you get in nature. So the radio signals being produced by stars and galaxies, it covers a very large part of the spectrum, whereas technology, communication technology, covers a very narrow band, a very small part of the spectrum. And so it's very easy for us when we do these searches with big telescopes like the 40-meter telescope here in Thailand. It's very difficult to distinguish between a signal that's being produced by technology to do communication and a signal that's being produced by a star or a galaxy. So that's why we're interested in these sort of very narrow band, very peculiar, modulated, so signals that are either changing their frequency to convey information or changing their amplitude, their strength to convey information. These are very different from the signals that nature produces. So the reason we're looking for those is they're really easy to distinguish from natural signals.
So it's just a matter of we start looking from where there's light to be seen. It's easier for us to look in radio. Is that it? Or is there also something particular special about the radio signal?
I mean, radio is special because basically, the reason we're using radio on mobile phones, for example, is because radio waves, pass through windows, they bend round corners, they're very long wavelength, they can even go through walls if they're not too thick. So sort of radio is really optimal in terms of when you want to transfer a signal over very long distances. And so in the galaxy is a very big thing, very long distances. It has a lot of dust in the way. If you sort of add up all the dust between ourselves and another exoplanet, for example, then, radio is completely unaffected by that dust because it's very long wavelength. As you go up to higher frequencies, then you get more absorption by dust, but you can convey more information if you go to higher frequencies. So higher frequencies, using lasers, narrowband signals, they're basically the same as radio waves. They're also of really important interest to the SETI community. So it's not just radio, we're also doing optical SETI, looking for very narrowband laser signals.
All right, so it sounds like the radios are easy to modulate, is much more easy to attach information to them, but maybe they're not maybe they evolve differently. So besides radio signal, what if some civilization evolve without ever invented radio? But besides radio signal, are there any other possible way that we might be able to detect them?
Yeah, I think it's the other way that we can detect them now is if you look for exoplanet, that is the planet outside the solar system, now we can detect the atmosphere of exoplanet already. Some of them have water, some of them have something. How we can detect them? Because if you have the light from the star pass through the atmosphere of the planet, you can get the absorption of some molecule in the atmosphere of that planet. That means you know that on that planet it have water, methane or something. If you detect something that is quite weird, like CFC or industrial gas, something, you can say that on that planet it have aliens that do industrial already without to detect the signal or anything. That is the other way that we can looking for the alien, like, okay, we can detect some gas or something that is cannot possible to detect on the normal star. And I think I love one quote from the GM people, that is the Nobel laureate in 2019, that it may be that we cannot detect or see them, but we can detect them in the future, because you know that we will not see the alien because it will be very far away if we go to travel to them, but we can detect by the radio signal, or we can detect by the some chemical signature in the atmosphere. But to see them in the real world, it will be very hard for us because we don't have the camera to photo them directly. Yeah.
All right. But so, I mean, we're talking about how we're going to find him, but we haven't really talked about, so why should we even do this to begin with? Like, so why should we try to find extraterrestrial life? And so what is the reason for them? And I mean, if we do indeed find one, what do you think would happen? And how do you think just like finding them would impact like us?
So I think the reason we want to do it is because, you know, this room is full of people at the moment, of people who are interested in this topic, and we see this repeated all the way through the world, throughout the world, that people are really interested in knowing the answer to this question of, are we alone in the universe? It's very popular with the public. It's popular with scientists as well, maybe to a lesser extent. So I think we have a duty to actually, because the public pays us to do what we do, we have a duty to actually answer some of the questions that the public wants answers to. And I think it's also the case that no one is an expert in this topic. I don't know the answer to the question, are we alone? So everyone, you know, has a valid opinion on this topic. It doesn't matter what your background is or what your expertise is. Everyone has a valid opinion and everyone's interested to know the answer. It just kind of blows my mind to think about, you know, what could alien civilizations look like? You know, what do they do? Are they like us? Do they like music? Do they watch Netflix? You know, all these kind of things, normal things. You know, a civilization that's evolved totally independently from us in another part of the galaxy. It would be incredible to understand, you know, what they do and where they came from and all the things that they've overcome on the way, on their path, would just be, just blow my mind, to be honest.
So, as a researcher actively, you know, searching for them, do you, like, honestly, do you think we're going to find them in our lifetimes?
I think, you know, I think as was mentioned earlier, it's really difficult. If SETI was easy, we would have already detected the signal, you know, because many people are looking at the sky for many different reasons, and so far we just haven't done it. So, I mean, it probably means that technological civilizations like our own, you know, are probably quite rare. You know, it doesn't happen all the time, even if the conditions are right. There's a lot of sort of random events have happened to get us to where we are today. And not only that, if you get a technical civilization, then the big question is, how long does it stay around for? You know, is it around for 100 years, for 10,000 years, 100,000 years? And that's really what makes SETI difficult. If a civilization like our own, for example, is only around for 100 years, then there can be many civilizations in the galaxy, but they come and go, and they never overlap in time, so we never detect each other.
Yeah, I mean, like, even with us, like, the signal we're emitting to space right now compared to what we did, like back in the the 80s, 90s are completely different by now too, right? So, well, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. This is just the kind of question that we'll only know the answer for sure once we find them. So we're going to have to keep looking, I guess. So speaking of which, so there has been, many like recent initiatives, like, and many new ones, like such as like the Breakthrough Listen, which is like, what makes this unique is it's a SETI program funded from the private foundation. So can you tell us more about this? And so why do you think the private sector would be interested in finding out if there are aliens or not?
I think because the private sector reflects the kind of people that are in this room. So it's not government officials or funding agencies, but it's actually just normal people that are interested in this topic. They happen to have resources that they're prepared to invest in the topic. And that's what's happened with Breakthrough Listen, for example. So Yuri Milner and Julia Milner have invested a lot. It's totally transformed the field. It's totally rejuvenated the field over the last 10 years. Most of the people doing SETI now are under the age of 30. They're doing PhDs, they're now going on to do postdocs. It's an incredible, vibrant and dynamic world because people, just like people in this room, but people who have resources are interested in funding this. And I think also, the public purse is also supporting SETI in the sense that I think SETI is moving into a different era. We're moving into an era where we are interested in doing astronomy, but looking for artifacts in astronomy, just normal astronomy database, looking at all the huge archives that all the large telescopes are producing, and looking for, sort of signatures of technology in that astronomical data. So in a sense, the public is paying for it through public institutions and funding agencies and the facilities that we all have, but these very rich private individuals are also funding it. So I think in the future, we have the best of both worlds, which is great.
Sounds like a pretty great deal indeed. So before people signing up for this event, we have listed for them in the application form to answer what would you say to an alien on first contact, and it has a list of some of them right here. So some of the things people would say to an alien according to our survey is welcome to our world, namaste. One of them might suggest that we say hello from many different languages and ask if they understand, introducing themselves, asking if they're real, asking where have you been? I hope you're just not looking for a date. And then asking what planets are you from? What's your solar system like? What are your biological mechanisms like? Are we the first intelligence being you've seen? Do you have Buddha or God, same like our world? Do you have capitalism over there? Have you eaten already? That's a cute one. Have you ever tried Thai food? I bet they have not. And how are they? How's the trip here? Would you like some water or some food? Oh, that's not. Will you marry me? I'd say maybe chill out a little bit for this person. So okay. So I think some of them could be pretty interesting. Do you care to comment on some of these? And what do you think if we do get to communicate with them? What should the first message question we ask with them would be?
Yeah, for me, I think if I contact with the alien, I will not say anything to alien. Because that if we want to communicate with something that we don't know or some situation that we don't know, it will be very tricky. Why? It's like, kangaroo, right? What is the meaning of kangaroo? Kangaroo mean I don't know. Because when the first time that the captain could go to Australia and they meet the Australian Aborigines and they ask that what is this animal? And they say kangaroo. Kangaroo mean I don't know. That means this is what is the difficult thing if you want to communicate with someone. That means in this one, that means if I found alien and I think it have been per protocol or something that the first thing that we should do is we should not start to contact them directly. Why? Because we don't know that some message that we want to contact them is will they understand us or not? That is the first thing that is we have to working on. It's not only astronomer or anything, but it's like you have to have the linguistic or some people that working in this field and try to start to little communicate with them. That is the thing that it will be really hard for if we say like what is the first contact look like. I say like it may be really hard for us to starting to understand and communicate with them. Yeah.
So maybe before we start talking to them, maybe we should listen to them first.
I don't know. I think we have to have some protocol like start to introduce ourselves in some way that it's not like okay just say hello because they will not know what is the meaning of hello for us.
All right. And speaking of which, so if we were to find a proof that extraterrestrial intelligence does exist, what should we do? What do you think is going to happen? And actually, in fact, like does SETI has like a protocol what to do if you found one?
Yeah, so we do have a set of protocols, and in fact, it's the IAA SETI committee that wrote those protocols over the last 30 years or so, and has been updating those protocols every 10 years or so. So we're due for another update of the protocols, but in principle, what we should do is if you do find a signal, you're out at your telescope, and you find something that's very unexpected, and you keep on looking at it, and you try and observe it in all sorts of different ways. And if at the end of all of that, you're absolutely convinced that this is an alien signal, or the signature of an alien, then the thing that you're supposed to do according to the protocols is you're supposed to get it verified independently. So you should then go to your colleague using a completely different telescope and completely different system and hopefully different software as well, and ask them to basically verify that signal. And if they say, yep, we see the same thing and we think the same thing, then the next step is to publish it in the public domain and to also contact the United Nations and the Director General of the United Nations, and to tell him or her that we've got this signal and we think you should know about it, and over to you about do you want to reply to the signal and how do you want to manage the publicity around the signal.
So is there a mandate that we need to release to the public, announce, or do we keep quiet before we figure it out?
To be quite honest, I think the protocols, they are there. But as I said before, I don't think a SETI researcher will actually detect a SETI signal. I think it's more likely to be an astronomer that's never heard of the SETI protocols, and so it just goes and puts it on social media or whatever, right. So that this process will probably never happen.
Yeah.
For good or for bad.
It does sound to me like what you describe. Like if you ask, so what is the first thing you would do? And I would say probably the first 100 thing a scientist would do would be double check the result, right? Yeah. Double check, triple check, and like keep checking until we're sure. And I think for most scientists, I can speak for most scientists, I think for things like intelligence life, proof of intelligence life, the ending to like, oh yeah, we're really sure is probably a lot longer than most other detections.
No, I think in practice the process will be double check your result, don't tell any of your colleagues, and then publish in Nature the next day.
Yeah, that's probably true. And then I'll show up in Nature, right? And then you'd probably keep it quiet in Nature until preprint at that point. But this brings me another question. There has been, from what that's been saying, people have said that one of the closest signal we've ever had to, the actual signal from alien is the WOW signal. I'm sure you've heard of it, and it's been made very popular by the recent, Netflix series Three Body Problem. They, actually refer to that again. So, can you comment on the WOW signal, and do you think it's accurate to say that that is the closest thing we have to a signal from ancient alien civilization?
Well, the WOW signal was detected in 1977, so it's a long time ago. It was detected using what you would call primitive radio technology. I'm not a big fan of the WOW signal, to be quite honest. I never talk about it. I don't think it's really good evidence of an extraterrestrial intelligence at all. The technology that was being used was not, the spectral resolution was very, very poor. I think it's much more likely to have been radio frequency interference or maybe even a natural flare star or something like that. So I think it's very poor evidence. I think if you look at the technology that we have today, then it's so many orders of magnitude better than what we had in 1977. People have looked in the direction of the WOW signal many times with the VLA in the 1980s and more recently with Breakthrough Listen just a few years ago, and have not been able to find anything. So I think it's a very poor example of a potential SETI signal. I think since then there have been much better potential signals, but none of them actually meet the criteria of being extraterrestrial. They're always ended up being identified with local radio frequency interference.
Speaking of which, so if let's say, I guess this question can go for both of you. If let's say an intelligent civilization does exist on a certain star within the distance that we can observe from here, both like with a radio telescope and optical telescopes, and if they do really live there, they have a civilization, they have like radio capable signal, what are the kind of evidence we would need, like observationally wise, to prove that it's actually a civilization over there? Let's have it here both optical and radio signal.
This is the thing that I think for WOW signal, I think it's like the same, that that even we have some evidence, but you cannot convince everyone to believe in this evidence. That is the thing that if you ask for one astronomer, someone may say like, okay, if we detect this thing, like detect WOW signal already, we confirm that it have the alien civilization there, but some is not enough. That means it will be very hard for astronomer or scientists to convince everyone in the world to believe in the one thing. That means you have to have very strong evidence, and I know that the strongest evidence is you can look at it by eye for many people, and they land on the earth, and that is just the one thing that you can confirm that it has the evidence that it can be recorded. Even now, if in the future, if we can say like, if we can detect some SETI signal or atmosphere of some planet, that maybe half of the people in the world not believe in that one. That is the hardest thing to convince everyone, and I believe that many years or maybe forever that maybe we cannot convince everyone that it's like it have alien there. It's like the Earth flat. Right? I think even you have the evidence.
We have a picture that Earth is not flat and still people still believe it's flat.
That is the thing that you can still not convince everyone to believe.
Okay, but what if we don't have to convince everyone? What would be like the best evidence? So like you mentioned before, like chemical signature, spectral lines, for industrial civilization, what kind of signature should we be looking for like an evidence of an industrial civilization on a planet?
I think the SETI signal will be the strongest one, right? The moderate signal, that is the signal that is send the message, some message to us.
So radio signal message?
Yeah, because if you can detect something like now we know that in Venus, someone try to detect the phosphine. And even we can detect that one, it seems like some people don't believe in that.
Right, I don't think we even agree on what is the best biosignature currently. I mean, you used to think oxygen. Now we discovered many of other natural geological process can release oxygen. We use phosphine, but except like they completely miss the interpretation. So I think like something like radio signal with encoded message might do. But like, okay, how would we know that a radio signal have an encoded message? And if we know nothing about the sender, how would we even interpret that kind of signal?
Well, I think it would be easy to recognize an artificial radio signal. That's going to be easy. But I think what you would want is that you'd want to build up a picture of this alien civilization. first of all, across the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So you can be sure that, if something gets published in Nature tomorrow that says we've found this alien radio signal, that every astronomer, every observatory in the world will be pointing their telescopes at that star or the exoplanet. First of all, you'd want to see if there was an exoplanetary system. Imagine you had, technology that was much better than our own. You'd want to take spectra of the exoplanet to do the stuff that we've just been talking about, looking for oxygen, looking for methane, looking for industrial pollution. We'd want to see, we'd go into the mid-infrared, for example, looking for waste heat, because we know that civilizations, especially probably advanced civilizations, will be using a lot of energy, so they produce a lot of waste energy, and you see that in the mid-infrared or maybe in the far infrared. So you'd look across the whole electromagnetic spectrum, and you'd build up evidence from, all these different areas to give you a picture. You would hope that the exoplanet would be in the habitable zone, for example. Not too cold, so not too far away from the star, not too close to the star. You'd build up, a body of evidence that I think, you would then, understand a lot more about the planet. If it is a planet, it might not be a planet. I mean, personally, I think it's quite likely that if we do detect an alien signal, it could be a free-flying spacecraft, for example, that isn't bound to a star. There's all sorts of possibilities, but so you would really want to try and just use all the tools, all the scientific tools, all the astronomical tools that we have to build up that big picture that would really convince, hopefully, maybe not everyone, but most people.
So it wouldn't be just like one thing, it would probably a multiple of different things until beyond reasonable. That, and of course, if they suddenly just show up one day, right, and that we'll also know for sure. So I think you have covered a lot of good topics here, but I'd also like to have some questions from the audience. So any questions at all from the audience, if you'd like to ask either Michael or Fluke here? Anyone? Oh, I can see some hands over there. Please speak to the mic.
Hello, Professor Garrett. So I wonder if you're familiar with the Fermi paradox, and if you are, what's your thought about it? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Fermi paradox is basically, the idea that, we know that there are every star basically has a planet, right? We know that, planets are ubiquitous throughout the galaxy. So there are more planets than there are stars. Many of those planets must be in the habitable zone. They must have the conditions in which life will arise, and potentially intelligent life, and potentially technological civilization. So physics, maybe not biology, but physics kind of drives you towards this idea that, technical civilizations in principle could be relatively common. And so the question then becomes, well, why haven't they arrived here? Why don't we have next to me an alien telling us about his home planet?
Half a galaxy conquered by an alien.
All those kind of things. Where are they? And so that's known as the Fermi paradox. And I think there are many solutions to the Fermi paradox. I've been working quite recently on the fact that we're moving from a biological sort of civilization into potentially a post-biological civilization, intelligent civilization through AI and robotics. Potentially that could go very, very wrong. Because this is the first time that we've ever introduced autonomous technology that we don't really have control over. So, it might not end very well, at least for us. Maybe it'll end well for them, in which case it doesn't solve the Fermi paradox. And the other thing that I already mentioned is, just the longevity of a technical civilization. How long are we around for? Can we overcome the kind of challenges that seem to face every technological civilization, such as climate change that we have at the moment, such as regulating AI, such as sort of nuclear catastrophe? All these things are potential solutions to the Fermi paradox, but none of them sort of really quite sort of solve it in a sense. So it's still there and still a bit of a problem.
I think like all the solutions to the Fermi paradox are quite dark, honestly. None of them are happy. Obviously, we'd like to see ourselves like conquering half the galaxy in the future. And the fact that there aren't any right now, it's kind of scary thought. But I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. And I see another questions over here. We have a microphone from the audience. Or the audience.
Thank you very much. My name is Alex, Club 22. I would like to thank you very much for this event, and especially NARIT management and you personally. So my question is, in this ocean of fake news and pictures and articles and social media and etc., could you please recommend any sources that we can follow as ordinary people, where we can get this information, not really scientific, but really kind of easy to understand? Thank you very much.
I think that's a great question, and I'm handing the microphone over to my colleague here because I'm not sure what the answer is. I mean, if you look at astronomical journals, for example, and they're all publicly available, so papers that people like myself publish, they're all in the public domain. You can look at those. It's all, there. You can search on the word SETI or whatever. I think those are a good source of information. I think some of the physics magazines, Physics World, for example, that's also a good publication. I see that at least for my press releases, it does a good job on understanding them. But you're right, I mean, a lot of it is just clickbait and stuff that I've produced myself, just ends up on the, newspapers like the Daily Mail, for example, which is, I mean, it's fun to see it, but, it's kind of nonsense in a sense. So I think it's really difficult, but, I think if you look especially at sort of, scientific journals and scientific news media that are sort of really good, then you can get sort of good value information. But it's definitely a problem, and it's a really good question. And my colleague is going to.
I think it's quite interesting because at the dawn of internet, we imagine like, with all the information freely accessible, like we must have been so smart. We have access to all the right information. Well, turns out we also have access to all the wrong information as well. And we thought like the productivity would be so high. We don't have to spend so much time like looking for the right book to find the information, citation, the right citation. And turns out all our researchers is like wasting time browsing YouTube videos. Like who knows? I mean, this is a real problem. And I think we are in the process of figuring out the solution. We might find a solution, a positive one someday. We might not. We just have to wait and see. And this could even be another solution to the Fermi paradox. Maybe another civilization happened and they could not figure out how to get out of clickbait, for example, and technology stopped. I guess we'll just have to do better. Okay, but that's a good question. I see many more hands. Yeah. Let's have one over here from the front. Okay, that one first.
If we really want to find out about aliens, should we send a signal for them to detect if there are any?
That's a good question. We talked about detection. We haven't about talking to them yet. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So we have SETI, which is very passive. We're just listening for a signal. But other people are also interested in what's called sort of active SETI, messaging SETI, so called METI, M-E-T-I. And they're very keen on transmitting information and signals out into space with a message, so that it hopefully would get picked up by other civilizations. And I think it's fair to say that the scientific community is pretty split on whether this is a good idea or not. And in fact, the committee that I'm chairman of has basically said that it's not a good idea just to sort of send out messages that, first of all, we need to understand who actually speaks for planet Earth, and we haven't really identified what entity it is that can actually speak for planet Earth. Maybe it's the United Nations, for example, but so far we haven't really done very well in understanding who would broadcast and what message would be broadcast, and would everyone be happy on this planet, every individual be happy with that message. And people feel that it's also maybe not very responsible to send that message because, you know, the chances of being discovered by another civilization are obviously much higher if you send very powerful messages into space. But at the same time, we actually do this all the time. So, for example, when we're communicating with the deep space spacecraft like Voyager and Pioneer and New Messenger, we are continuously sending very powerful signals in their direction. So we do this, we have radar systems that are doing exactly the same thing. Over the horizon radar, even in this area of the world, is prolific. So we are sending extremely powerful signals out into space anyway. But the question is, you know, if you do transmit a message, then, you know, what message do you send and who sends it? And is that actually a responsible thing to do?
Okay.
I have one question for my.
Okay.
Okay. I want to know that if we use the most powerful radio dish to send the signal, how far that we can send it? Because you know that now, I know that in next year we cannot contact with the Voyager already because the signal is too weak already for them. How far that if we have the all telescope, I know that Voyager is not far away in terms of the distance between the stars, but now we lost the contact with Voyager next year. That means the hopeful of our radio message is not enough to send to the other civilization, right?
So yeah, Voyager, of course, the reason that we won't be able to detect Voyager forever is because the energy source within Voyager, which is a radioactive energy source, is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. That's the main problem. And so the power of the transmitter is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. And also, it's only a few watts that's actually being produced by these spacecraft. So it's a tiny amount of energy in the first place, and the dish that's on the spacecraft is also very small. It's only a few meters across, so you don't get very much gain in the direction of our own planet when they send back their information. So that's the reason that, you know, Voyager and the other spacecraft will be difficult to communicate with as they get further away and their energy sources become weaker and weaker. But if, for example, if you take the Arecibo telescope, you know, unfortunately it's no longer with us, but we have the FAST telescope in China, for example. If you put a transmitter on that telescope, well, you get a gain of about 10 to the 7, about, you know, 10 million. You make the signal, the power of the transmitter, about 10 million times more powerful when you attach it to, for example, the FAST telescope in China. And if you have another FAST telescope that's maybe something like 1,000 light years away, then you will detect that signal. No problem about that at all. So it really depends, you know, not so much on the power of the transmitter, but actually the telescope that transmits the signal and the telescope that receives the signal. But, you know, in 1959, two guys, Phil Morrison and Giuseppe Cocconi, wrote a paper which basically identified that the telescopes that we were building there could communicate across intergalactic scales between the stars. And so it was true in 1960, and it's even more true now in 2024 that our telescopes, you know, can transmit and receive information over huge distances.
Probably not a matter of powerful enough, but a matter of like pointing at the right place and the right time. That's probably much more challenging. getting, and of course, like even you can send them, there's, I mean, it probably doesn't matter to us because the signal would never come back to us within our lifetime anyway, unless for really, really nearby cases. Okay, we have a couple more questions. I think we have time for a couple more. I see one in the front here, or we can do that one in the back.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ava. When I first see this advertisement on Facebook, I jump on it immediately because thank you so much for having this, because me and my husband, we always have this debate. He's the one who believes that we already been encountered by an ET, and I'm the opposite. And I remember our first few dates, we walking on this beautiful beach, and we just keep talking about this and debate about this. I'm a big fan with Big Bang Theory, and I love Kutapali. So that's my first question. Is your working environment, it looks like Kutapali working in the Big Bang Theory or not? And the second question is, even after we listen to you guys, which is definitely the most knowledgeable, you three spend all your adult life in this. Believe it or not, he still believes that there's an organization pay you to tell us that we never encounter them. So how could we convince someone that, well, I guess the question is it safe to say there are ET out there, but it's just that it's quite impossible that we already interact. Yeah. Thank you.
So the first question, yes, we all the astronomers live in a two-bedroom apartment in Pasadena and do nothing but play video games and read comic books all day. Yeah, that's quite that part is accurate. Well, not really, but I mean, some of the part of the Big Bang Theory, it's can be a lot of scientists would be relatable to, but of course it's a TV show, so a lot of it is exaggerated, and I'll let Dr.
For
the second question.
Second question, I think it's really, as I told you, that it's really hard to convince everyone in the same idea or same like we have encountered or not. But I think as a scientist, the best thing that we can do is provide you the information based on the thing that we have been discovered to them, to everyone. And I think we cannot convince like, okay, we have encountered, someone have been encountered or not. We cannot convince everyone like, okay, we not encounter, but it's the thing that we just get the information for everyone like, okay, now what is the situation that how many planets, how many signals that we have been detect, or some weird signal that we have detect from radio dish or not, and how long, where we have been searched for. I think the SETI have been searched for, I think, 20 years or 30 years already, right? I think we have searched for a long time, and if you look in the scientific paper, we have looked for many places to looking for the radio signal, and some is mystery, some is no evidence, something like that one, and we try to provide the information to everyone like the one that we have the scientific evidence, but we cannot convince everyone like to have the same idea like we have encountered or not encountered the alien civilization.
I think, I mean, I'll tell you what I feel myself. So I'm a physicist, I suppose, in a sense, that's where I come from, and I'm very optimistic. So physicists are typically optimistic. They have a very simplistic view of the world as well. And so if you sort of take that logic to its extreme, then you probably think that there are, civilizations, intelligent civilizations out there. They might be quite rare, so that we might not be always sort of present in the galaxy at the same time, because we might, have civilizations don't probably live that long. But I think they're out there. And I think they're out there to be discovered. Otherwise, I'm sure we wouldn't be, having this discussion or building radio telescopes or whatever. But I have to say that if you took this physicist, and you brought in a biologist instead, then a biologist would be much more pessimistic about the chances of extraterrestrial intelligence out there. And that's because they look at our own evolutionary path, the way that life has developed, you know, from single-cell organisms to multicellular organisms, you know, and this whole path all the way up to intelligent animals like ourselves and dolphins and whales and dogs, cats, all that kind of thing. You know, that took 4 billion years of evolution of life for that to happen. That's a significant fraction of the lifetime of the universe. And if you talk to a biologist, they'll also tell you that there are many things that happened along that path that might never happen again. You know, they're random events, a whole lot of random events that got us to where we are today. And they will say that the chances of that being repeated somewhere else, even in our own galaxy, even though there are, you know, billions and billions upon billions of planets in our own galaxy, that the chances of that happening are very low. So at the same time, biologists don't have a theory of life. They don't know how life arose. They can't make life in the laboratory yet, for example, although they say that they're getting closer to it. So it's often who you ask. Physicists, as I said, are pretty optimistic, but I also listen to the biologists, and they're actually very pessimistic that this kind of society, that you'll find that anywhere else in the galaxy, which is a bit sad. So I want to stay happy, so I'm staying optimistic that they are out there and that we should be looking for them.
But I guess, of course, we should also keep in mind that biologists are heavily biased for Earth life. And, you know, we don't know if it is the only possible way life could exist in the galaxy. And, you know, that we don't know for sure. I think we have time. Unfortunately, we only have time for one last question. So I'm going to... This person in the front has been raising her hand for quite a while. So let's go for this one.
Okay, thank you. I heard about the news, like, I think last year or 2 years ago, about they found like UFO or UAP, like 3 places, like just stay in the air, and then they have to use the military to shoot it down. What do you think about that? And another question is, I heard about the Pentagon. They announced before that they accept that the ET exit. And then they changed their mind again, that, oh, we couldn't find any evidence about that. So what do you think about this news as well? Thank you.
I think what you described to me sounds like a series of miscommunication, and that happens quite a lot. So I think the first event you mentioned, that the military shooting down, that would probably be the balloon over the United States that was shot down by, like followed by U-2 and then shot down by a fighter plane. And in a sense, that is a UFO because it's unidentified flying objects until they got really close. So, but that was not from outside the Earth. That came from the Earth for sure. And then the next thing with the Pentagon, and the Pentagon do release announcement over time, but then the media tend to sometimes they got the words mixed up. Sometimes some people might misinterpret some message as being admitting alien exists. But however, one major thing that really did happen recently is the change of stance towards the UAP. First, like they renamed UFO into UAP, and the big problem with this is right now when we think UFO, we think flying saucers, we think aliens, we think and we also think crackpots. You know, when someone talks about UFO, and this can have a negative impact, like for example, for pilots who actually might observe some really rare aerial phenomena that has not been able to explain. After all, what UFO actually means is unidentified flying objects. Anything that flies, we have no idea what it is. I see something flying in the air, I don't know what it is, that is a UFO, right? But nowadays, I say that as UFO, you think completely different things. So that's part of the reason why we changed the name to identify aerial phenomena, and now we're encouraging the pilots and everyone to report about it. Instead of shaming anyone who even think about they saw UFO, we're now encouraged, let's step forward, let's study this. And we don't think most of these is going to end up being confirmed to be extraterrestrial, meaning from outside the Earth. They're probably from the Earth, but we want to know more, and who knows, if one of these actually happen to be from outside the Earth, We want to know for sure. We don't want just to dismiss this as being from some crackpot. So I think there is a communication, but this is a widely viral topic. So a lot of media like to spread the words, and like you play telephone, sometimes words gets lost its meaning, and people like misinterpret. So this is also another danger of living in current age. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, I just go back to the other question that we had about disinformation.
Exactly.
There are people that are actually, just trying to use this. I don't think there's any evidence that the UAPs have any kind of extraterrestrial origin. I think that's nonsense. I think there are people that are sort of using that for their own gain, financial gain in some places, journalists, pseudoscientists, people who have the potential to make money and monetize the whole thing. And that's why it's such a big thing in the US, because that's the kind of thing that happens in the US. And I think a lot of these UAPs are just natural phenomena, or they're man or human-made balloons or other craft, drones, for example. I think we have to realize that the sky is a much more different place than it was 50 years ago. There are many things in the sky at the moment, mostly surveillance, for example, and every country flies these, and often it's for security and for defense, but there are a lot of things up there, and you don't have to go into space to find them, but they're actually flying around and keeping us secure, and they're there, and they can be misidentified, and things can be misinterpreted, and stories can emerge that are just sort of nonsense in the end, unfortunately.
All right. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for the questions. But if you would like some more questions to ask, you can come and. Oh yes, that's a little girl. Let's have the one extra question for this little girl. Microphone behind you.
I see a UFO before.
You've seen a UFO before. What do they look like? Circle?
It's a purple one.
It's a purple one. Okay, that's interesting. Or maybe you should report that to someone.
Yeah, I think you are right that you have been seeing UFO.
Yes.
You see something that you still unidentified.
You didn't understand what it was.
That is the thing that I have to say to every audience, like UFO is not alien, always alien. UFO is not equal to alien, and UFO that means you still can be not identify that. That is the key message. That if you say like I maybe go out and say like okay I saw some UFO because I don't know that what is kind of this flying object I write. Yeah.
All right. Well. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have a question for, but if you'd like to chat some more, you can come up and talk to one of the speakers afterwards. But before you go, I'd like to have an announcement. If you like this kind of talk, we have another talk coming up on the 29th of June. Our director will be talking about the unspoken scientific truth in Thailand air quality crisis. Of course, in Chiang Mai, this is a big topic. We have to endure through the problem of air quality every single year. If you would like to listen to more, to hear more about it, come join us on June 29th, right here in this room at from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here. And it will also happen right after the Thai Astronomical Conference. This is public. This talk is open for the public. All right, and if you're also here, if you haven't had time to check out the exhibits yet, we today actually closed for every Monday our exhibition is closed, but today because this is a special talk today, we will be opening the exhibit just shortly afterwards. So if you would like to check them out, please feel free to do so within the next half an hour or so. Otherwise, feel free to come up and talk, and if you'd like to join us for our exhibition and for our planetarium shows. We open every day except for Monday. And for the English sessions, every Friday 11 a.m. our shows will be in English. So I'll see you around again. And okay, and please, if you're joining us, there is a QR code for our evaluation for this event. If you like this event or something we can do better to improve your experience, please don't hesitate to leave us a comment up above. All right, and thank you all for coming, and everybody, I wish you all have a lovely night. Thank you.